Our next speaker is an innovative technology evangelist and a thought leader who challenges the status quo by asking, what if? She was a leader for transformation projects in multiple industries, including telecommunication, regulated power utilities, and public sector. With the presentation, The Path You Choose, from Reading, UK, let's give a warm welcome to Liana Ault.
Thank you so very much, and welcome everyone. I hope that you're having a great time at the conference and that you'll be inspired by the stories that you hear in this conference. So today I'm going to talk about the path you choose. And I think it's important to realize that the path we choose is not necessarily set in stone. So Anna Collins says this in an interview with FastWeb around career paths. There is no ideal path to success. So stop trying to find it. And I can really appreciate this because so often in our life, we feel that we need to have everything sorted out as a young adult, that we need to understand where we're going. We need to have our career figured out and our life figured out. But really, success is individually defined. And accordingly, each path to success is also created by an individual. So when we look at the society, the pressure that society puts on us, especially as women to succeed, it's no wonder there's a great deal of anxiety around those choices. We often are asked at a very young age, what do you want to be when you grow up? We have to commit to a plan of study when we're in secondary school. We have to really intensify that study and pick an area of focus in university. But what if we're not happy with our choice? What if we make the wrong choice? And what if we're not successful? And so often with children that I've raised, and also with young adults that I have mentored, these questions come up. And so I'm hoping that today, through my journey, you can understand that sometimes the path you choose changes. So when I was 5 years old, and you asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, it was a little bit of a strange answer. My mother told me that I always told people a ballerina or a lineman. And a lineman is one of those people that climb electrical poles or work in bucket trucks. And so I think this choice exemplified what my father was trying to instill in myself and my sisters growing up, is that we could be anything that we wanted to be. And that the world was changing and we needed to embrace and take advantage of the opportunities that we had that my mother didn't. But that seems a little impractical, a ballerina or a lineman. And so as I grew, obviously, my choices changed, but they still were extremely diverse. And so at 13, I wanted to be a writer or marine biologist. Again, both I was very passionate about. I had written a short story and submitted it to a local competition and won. But my entire time I was growing up, I was fascinated by marine life and especially the mammals that lived in the ocean. I wanted to study and understand their intelligence and their behaviors. But again, these didn't seem very practical to me. And my family, growing up on a farm, was very practical. And while growing up on that farm, there were a lot of times that we did without the necessities. Oftentimes, our house was cold. And we didn't always have enough food to eat. And so I think that really made an impression on me about what success was. And so I became a little obsessed with making money. And so when I graduated secondary school, I applied to be a double major in accounting and finance, which, obviously financial success was really what success was all about, right? It was about how much money you made. It was about the car you drove and the house that you lived in. And so I thought that this is where I really needed to focus, is I need to make more money because I didn't want to go without, and I didn't want my future family to go without either. So 6 months into my university career, I realized that I hated accounting and finance, and I didn't see a need to focus on money. And so I was growing personally. And I wanted to do something instead that maybe was more about my personality and would make me happy. So I quickly pivoted. I'll be an English professor because after all, I was granted the highest award in English at my secondary school. I was a writer. I still wrote quite a bit. I had teachers encouraging me to do this, and it seemed practical. And it's really what everyone else expected of me. But again, a few months into this, I realized that I was going to have to go to school for even longer, for 8 years, and that it was going to be a very confining role. And I just wasn't sure that that's what I wanted to do. And so I dropped out of university because I just was lost and I didn't want to make a mistake. This was about the rest of my life, and I needed to understand what I wanted to be. And so I worked. And after a year or two in the job market, I realized that I could be so much more, but I just didn't know what direction to take. And so I went back to school. I went to a 2-year community technical college and became a computer programmer. And I loved it. I loved the logic. I liked the work. But I also was in a very small rural area, and there wasn't a lot of opportunity. And I was worried about having to go outside of my area to look for a job. And so I just really wasn't sure if that was actually what I wanted to do. Now, over this entire time in my life, the one thing I knew is that I wanted to be a mom. And for me, that was the most important role for me, was being a mom. And right now in my life, I'm almost 50. And do I know what I want to be? Not yet. But when I do figure it out, I'll let you know. So in my career, now I have a 2-year programming degree. What do I do? So I started out as a help desk coordinator and a trainer at a local financial institution. And this was fun. It was a lot of people. I met people and I worked with them. And I was able to take my communication and my English skills and use that as a trainer to develop curriculum and to teach people about the systems they were using. I became a trusted advisor to those people who just were really unsure about technology. And after all, this has been a while ago. And so networking and a lot of the new systems were quite early in their adoption in financial institutions. But people were really worried about their abilities. And I was working with an older generation that was a little hesitant. And so I was able to take that technical jargon and break it down and simplify and make them feel more confident. And that was very rewarding for me. But I soon realized that I needed to be able to up my game, so to speak, and learn a little bit more about the networking technologies in general. So I took a promotion in that same company and I became a network technician. And this is when I really started getting into the architecture and design of network communications. And at the time, it was layer 2 and a little bit of layer 3 and some of the older circuits. And so I really did take the time to learn that. But I was still able to work with that same group of people that I had established relationships with and still continue to do both the technical and the soft skills, the communication skills, which are really important. And unfortunately, if you're in IT or know anything about it, you know that as a network technician, you're on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, usually 365 days a year. And it was a very demanding role, but I loved it. But something happened while I was in that role, and I became a mom. And this was amazing to me. And it was such a life-changing event that I needed to step back and I needed to think about what my priorities were. And unfortunately, the role I was in was not exactly conducive to being a mom. And so the hours I was working, there were times I would take my child to work and work overnight, and he would sleep in his little pumpkin seat, his car seat. Well, I worked all night on an outage, and so it just really was stressful. And I decided that maybe I needed to focus more on being a mom. And while I was thinking about this, and my son was only a few months old, I became pregnant again. And so I was going to have 2 children under the age of 2. And I realized I could no longer function as a network technician, but I needed to pivot and do something different and find balance. And so I went to a new company. I took a job as a public servant and worked for a school district there in the local community there where I was at. And I really loved that job. It was great to work with individuals, to work in education. I got to work with students and do after school programs and really broaden, again, my business development this way and looking at budgets, writing grants, and actually working on my leadership skills as well as the head of the department. So, life was great and it was beautiful. But then I realized, and I was continually told, well, you don't have a 4-year degree. And so in education, those people in that industry take a lot of stock about university degrees. And so in the meantime, I knew that I was going to be stifled on the pay scale if I didn't do something about the degree. And so I went back to school and I finished my 4-year degree. So here I am, a mom with two toddlers, about 3 and 4 at the time, working full time and going to school full time. I had great time management skills and organizational skills. It's the only way I really got through that period in my life. But then right after I got my degree, leadership changed at the school district. And I very quickly realized that I no longer aligned with the strategy of the school district and I needed to do something different. And so once again, I reached out to my external network because I had grown a really good network of vendors and of other community resources while I was at the school district. And so I reached out again and I looked for a new job. And soon I left the school district and became a network engineer again at a service provider, one of the local companies. And it was a much larger corporate environment where I knew I would have an opportunity to grow both professionally and personally, as well as have more upward mobility and an opportunity for promotion and leadership. And so I was really excited to take on that role. But like every other time in life, you're doing great and you're on your way and you think everything is perfect, and then something happens. And for me, it was cancer. And I was diagnosed with cancer when I was 38 years old. My children were in late primary, they were preteens, and it was a life-changing diagnosis for me. And although it was easy, compared to other people, my diagnosis and my treatments were quite easy. It really impacted what I wanted to do and really where I was in my life journey again. And so I started thinking about what do I want to do and what can I do that's meaningful. In the meantime, the stress level again had gone up a little bit more than I anticipated, and I was struggling to function. So I took a chance and applied at a new company, and this one was a power utility, and it was a place where many of my colleagues had started working, and they seemed to really have a great environment. They were all about safety. They were about powering the quality of life and providing a necessary function that our society depends on. And so I was really intrigued, and I thought, okay, we'll give this a chance. And I fell in love working at the power utility, and I took every opportunity I could to expand my network, to ask people about their jobs and to say, teach me what you do. I need to understand. And I was very blessed with a great number of mentors there. And the time I had as an infrastructure specialist in the field was flexible. I could be a mom. I could go do mom things at school when I was able to. And then I also got a special assignment, and I was able to be an innovation specialist. But this required me to work away from home through the week. 3 or 4 days a week, I was away from the house, and then only home on the weekends. And I thought, okay, this is a good experience. It's a good stepping stone. And so I took the opportunity. But after a year or two, I realized my kids were growing and they were getting ready to go off into the world on their own in a university. And I just wanted to enjoy and support them through that transition. So at the same company, I asked to be transferred and I took a role as a supervisor. And this really suited me. I realized that I wanted to, I love the technology side. I really wanted to be a people leader. I realized that leading and teaching people and helping people to grow was really important to me. And I think some of that was a function of being a mom and helping my children through difficult times and helping them to understand what they could do with their life and to help make those decisions. This particular role also was in what we call field work. And so I was able to work from home and to work really anywhere that we had an office all over the region that I served. And this allowed me, again, to concentrate on my kids in their last couple of years. And it was wonderful, and I loved it, and I was really doing well. I was getting a lot of attention from leadership and had a great career path. And I thought, I'm staying here. I really like what I'm doing. And, you know, I think I'll retire here. But again, there was change coming just around the corner. And I didn't anticipate the emotional ups and downs of what it would be like to be a mom with kids at university. No longer were they the focus. No longer were they my first priority. They were on their own. And so it was a really tough transition period for both them and for me. And then I realized, oh, I have 2 students in college. What does that really mean for me? There was a great deal of expense. And then I realized I have a whole lifetime now that I can concentrate on my career. What do I really want to do? And so I was entertaining a change again, but I wasn't really looking hard. And something happened that I didn't expect. NOKIA came to me, and because of my extensive network, the work I had done outside of the actual job in different trade associations and other networking events, I was getting noticed. And NOKIA offered me something I just felt like I couldn't refuse. I got to stay in the public utility space, in the power utility space, but now I got to work globally with power utilities. But there was one catch. This was going to require a relocation. I was going to move away from anything and everything that I had ever known, away and even further away from my kids, in order to take this position. And I had to decide if I was up to the challenge. It was a great benefits. It was a significant financial increase. And so I thought, you know what, at this time in my life, what else am I going to do with my time? My kids are in university. And so I took the leap. I took a chance and I changed directions. I had never been in sales and I had never worked for a global company. And so once again, it was a lot of change and it was a lot of work. And so that's what I did, is I took a job. And, you know, I went from being a farm girl to a woman who had no passport. And I visited 14 countries in my first year. And it was almost a culture shock for me, to say the least. And, you know, NOKIA has been a great place for me to work. But I knew that there were so many opportunities, and NOKIA really is a place that encourages people to look at transitioning to a horizontal role and not just vertically. You know, they understand. And if you look at my path and all the twists and turns and curves that my career has had, NOKIA really supports that as well. And so they wanted me to grow. And I looked at the opportunities and I thought, you know, I think I could do something else, and maybe not too far away from power utilities, but a small adjustment, a small adjacency. But again, it was going to require some change. And so I thought, well, you know what? Now I'm at a time in my life, my kids are almost out of college and they're on their own. They're starting their own careers. And I always wanted to travel, to live internationally. I was starting to travel internationally. So I took a leap and I became the head of the vertical for utility telco and digital industries. And this is just this last year, I immigrated. It's been a year now that I've lived in the UK. And that was a major change for an American to move to Europe. You know, it's a really different environment. And I knew that it was going to be hard work. And it has been. It's taken a lot of grit. It's taken a lot of time and effort. And, you know, the emotional side of that as well. Sometimes it's easier and sometimes it's difficult being away from my children who are now adults. But it's been a great opportunity. And so if you look at this particular chart, you can see the different times I've changed companies are in different colors. And so I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times in the last 20 years, I've changed companies. And with each one of those, there was a reason. Sometimes it wasn't necessarily for professional or personal growth. Sometimes it was for health. It was for family. But each time there were things I considered before I made that choice. But it's not been a straight path. And I would encourage you that maybe yours will not be a straight path either. So when you choose your path, what do you take? I ask that you look at these 4 items here and really think about what that path could be for you. Be brave. Well, the last thing I will say is be brave enough to take those chances, to make mistakes and change direction if you need to. And you know, you're the author of your own destiny. And if you don't like the path that you're on, it's really okay. Start paving another one. Thank you so much.
Liana, thank you very much for sharing your story and inspiring us today. Thank you.
Thank you.